Hi, I'm Tom Rue of the Coffin Foundation. Welcome to this edition of Top of Mind, where we are here with founder of MedCity Media, Chris Sepper. Hi, welcome to this edition of Top of Mind. I'm here today with Chris Sepper, entrepreneur, founder of MedCity Media, a company that's, I think, doing a big part to redefine what journalism is in today's society. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. For viewers of Top of Mind, I'd just give you a little bit of background. I actually had the good fortune of knowing Chris in his prior life, where he was actually quite a journalist and ascended the ranks even to editor status. And I got to watch him as he found the courage to take that step into the world of entrepreneurship. And so I feel kind of lucky that you happen to be in Kansas City today and we can get you on the couch for Top of Mind.
Thank you.
Perhaps you can start by giving a little bit of background about yourself and how MedCity Media came to exist as it does.
Sure. And as you said, I'm an ex-ink-stained wretch, a longtime print journalist who actually has reported everywhere from Philadelphia and Cleveland to Phnom Penh, Cambodia. My byline had been in the Washington Post, the Christian Science Monitor, Philadelphia Inquirer, Cleveland Plain Dealer. But I saw the media world was changing, and I didn't love print. I didn't love broadcast. I simply loved the journalism. And I said there was this change happening with digital, and I have always wanted to be a part of that change. And so living in Cleveland, which is one of the hot spots of healthcare, I said, wow, there is no, in this new digital world, there's no one place to go for great business of health news at a time when healthcare was transforming in front of our very eyes. And so I'm ready to be a bigger part of what's happening in media, and I wanted to serve so many people out there by writing about healthcare.
You know, we talked about this earlier today, and specifically, you know, the art, the craft of journalism and the integrity and, you know, the kind of the opinion that as things shift to a digital frontier, that somehow that standard has changed. And I know we had a pretty heated conversation about that. You know, I would like you to share that view as you see it and how it's impacting the industry.
Sure. There's a different dynamic happening with online journalism versus traditional being print and broadcast. Print was more of an exact science. Now that you're digital, with so many people contributing to it, with Twitter and with Facebook and with real-time reporting, it's sloppier. It's messier. There are more mistakes that happen at a Sandy Hook tragedy reporting than there would be 10 or 15 years ago. But the journalism today is actually better. You have more people contributing information to get to the bottom of a story, which is really what journalism has really been all about. And it's more diverse than it's ever been before, which should be rewarding to this country. Despite how hard they tried, newspapers and TV stations never could get to an acceptable level of diversity in their newsrooms. Now you have digital journalism, which everywhere is getting every voice involved in the mix.
Is that what they're referring to as kind of like the citizen journalist now and the input of that? Because, you know, as I think about that, you know, there's the side of me that says more disclosure is great, you know, and more eyes on topics and subjects is good. But that's not necessarily good, you know, just because I have a keyboard doesn't necessarily mean my ideas are worthy of being read. You know, at the risk of being somewhat cynical, you know, how do you see your industry grappling with that reality?
What we first with journalism and media, it's always been this way, but now you're seeing the sausage made, is essentially what's happening. But you're also, what I think is exciting, is we are in the midst of this disruptive change, and everybody is seeing the sloppy parts, right? Disruption and drastic change, whether it's a startup in healthcare, it's a startup in media, is messy. You make mistakes. There are lots of eggs broken. But there is a shift going on from when you went to TMZ type journalism to now you have investigative reports that the digital media breaks full of sources like the Manti Te'o controversy.
Right.
Deadspin.com, repudiated years ago by Buzz Bissinger in an epic rant, is now, their reporting is on the front page of most of the daily newspapers in this country, certainly the sports pages.
Yeah, they're being cited now as the credible source.
They are the authority because they've built that new way of reporting, and they are finding ways to credibly get information. So we've watched this amazing transformation from let's experiment, let's figure it out, we know things are changing, to best practices, established journalism, and it's happening in that digital sphere with digital tools. And that's what's so exciting for me.
Well, speaking of amazing transitions, okay, first and foremost, you're on an entrepreneurial journey.
It's true.
And there's certain commonalities that happen regardless of what industry you're in or what the space it is that you're serving. I think you've been around for about 4 years now, if I remember correctly. So you've seen a fair amount of what, many that have gone before you have seen in that arc of entrepreneurship. Can you share how that journey has gone and maybe some challenges and I hate to use the word because it's so cliched, pivot, but any pivots you've had to make along the way or things that you went into it knowing it was going to go this way, but then you had to go that way to accomplish it. Can you share some of that?
Absolutely. On a high level, I think, I had to have the uncomfortable conversation that so many founders have of telling their co-founder that they're no longer, going to be working full time at their company. That was very hard. I
imagine it would be. I've done it myself.
And but also, I made hasty hires. In fact, for a while, some of my investors joked, said, "Well, you're very good at firing fast." Does
that mean you're falling in love too easily?
That's right. Well, you have a desire to grow your company. There's nothing more that you want than to see that company scale, and you want to beat back competitors. And in the media space, there's no IP, there's no intellectual property. It's speed to market.
Right.
And so you get caught up in saying, take your time, find the right people. I got to get people on board because I got to keep growing, and that is a killer mistake. And I would say but I think out of the hard moments are the great moments in entrepreneurship. And my journey isn't different than so many others, but this last year was MedCity Media's hardest year. We published MedCityNews.com, kind of a tech crunch for the life sciences. And we had put a lot of money in growing a part of our business. And it took more money than we thought. And we were going out for a new investment round.
Always does.
Always does. And our backs in August were to the wall. And I had a meeting with the different teams that basically said in private conversations, I said, look, if you do not hit your metrics month in and month out for the rest of the year, no one will invest in us. And now you shield your team from a certain amount of the pressure that a CEO or a management team gets, but there's moments of candor that you need to have with them. And this was one of those moments. And you could see the faces go ashen from this pressure. And so we have a Monday rallying meeting every Monday. And I said to them, I know that many of you have asked me personally, what happens if we don't hit these metrics? And I know you're having these conversations with yourself. But I want to tell you, you're asking the wrong question. Because it gets you off what your goal is, which is to focus on hitting these metrics.
Distracts, doesn't it?
That's right. But more importantly, you're not preparing yourself because you need to ask yourself, what happens when we win? Because we are going to win. I'm getting choked up thinking about this moment. And I said, what happens when we win? And the team responded. And there's probably nothing more fulfilling than seeing your back against the wall, seeing a group of people that you've helped put together who've contributed their, these are more than jobs for people in startup environments, whether they're, partners or recent hires. And we met our metrics. And we met them again, and we met them again, and we landed investment, and MedCity's traffic and all of our other metrics and value drivers grew. And that question, people now, in the course of months since then, it became a rallying cry. You would hear other leaders in the company saying, what happens if we win? And it was used, we just had our staff retreat for the new year where our morale is higher than ever, the challenges are bigger than ever, but it was said again, what happens when we win? Because we are going to win.
I appreciate sharing that because, again, from my own personal experience, I can reflect and relate to that. And I have to tell you, I'm guessing this. I want you to confirm or deny that, you felt a certain risk having that disclosure with your team. And then the second part of that question is, and once you did, you felt like, you didn't unburden yourself for the sake of unburdening yourself, but you understood and articulated for your team the real stakes so that they could own part of the success, part of hitting that, and take even a greater pride than they might otherwise have looking at it as like, well, my job is a little bit better today because the company had a good day or a good quarter or a good year. Is that fair to say? When I hire everybody at MedCity, this is my first startup, and when I hire them, I say to them,
I'm not just hiring you as an employee. I believe in you. But after the last 5 months, I don't think I felt closer. And you're right. There was you shield people because you wonder how much they can take.
Sure.
The team is more battle hardened, and I am more candid now with them than ever because I trust them more, and I think they trust me more. And as a result of almost teamwork by necessity of the team pulling together, we added more team building and more teamwork into the company because of that performance. It's a bonding moment, and
Sure.
and literally everybody responded, which was so amazing.
I want to ask you a question, and this I will confess this because I know, again, your background.
Yeah,
You came from an industry that, organized labor.
yeah.
That
I was a vice president of a union. Yeah,
So, I mean, you were in the belly of the beast, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, and in an environment where there was a kind of a management versus labor mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And we could have a whole nother episode dedicated to like how that might have contributed to the demise of the field.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you went from that side of the equation to management.
yeah.
Whether you intended to or realize it or not, starting down this entrepreneurial path. How much of the prior experience do you think has influenced your thinking and the way you manage staff, on the management side in your company?
My wife complains now that she can't talk to me about work because I'm management now and she's an employee, and I just don't get it anymore. But I actually think that my experience as an employee and in a very risk-averse environment of newspapers, and the experience of a union and my philosophy there, which I always said, unions make good managers manage. In a startup, you need to attract talent. You're pulling people away, good talent, away from lower risk opportunities and bringing them to new ones. So we have
Or perceived risk.
perceived risk, because journalism now is high risk no matter where you are.
Right.
So healthcare, flexible hours, the unique vacation time, willingness for anybody to work anywhere. I want to build this. Med City is now at a point when we think we're going to scale bigger, and I had to actually get a real employee handbook. And we brought these HR folks in, and
You're sounding like an adult now.
I know I don't feel like one, just a gray. And my team, I said, well, no, we have it this way, we have it that way. We understand that people are going to surf the web for certain things, that their job is their life and their life is their job, and there's kind of a mix, and we want to appreciate that. And they were blown away because and this is what bothered me as an entrepreneur, and I think it probably would bother most entrepreneurs as you encounter the more structured organizations that are working with bigger companies. But they said, most of the people we work with have more of a contempt for their employees. And I don't think as an entrepreneur you can afford that.
No.
You can't afford to look at an employee like they're leeching off you. You have to look at them to say, you still have to make tough decisions on pay raises. We turn people down, or we give them smaller than they want, or you have to extract value, and that sometimes means getting tough or having hard conversations. But you want to build an environment in which they share success, and in which you say, I want you to thrive. In fact, one of the things that, often when you were looking for another job in newspapers, you had to keep it quiet, and that people would punish you for this ambition. And I have 2 employees right now that I know are interviewing other places, and they can tell me that, and they're comfortable with it. Because I said early on, listen, I want you to succeed, and I don't believe for 1 minute either of you are going to retire at Med City Media. I said, and honestly, if people, much like if I build a great business, people will come to look to acquire it.
Right.
If I help you build a good career, naturally people will come looking for you. Be open with me about it. My commitment to you as an employee is a commitment to succeed, and just let me try and match it. And that's all. And I think that has created, I don't think there are pretty ugly moments sometimes, and that I'm not proud of, but I'm proud that we've tried to build this environment where people have that candor and have that desire to.
Well, I think one of the things you're touching on there is one of the things that's always attracted me to entrepreneurship, and why once I got the gene mutation, I could never go back. And my current stint and tenure at the Kauffman Foundation notwithstanding, I'm chronically unemployable now. And one of the things that attracts me to this, it's culture. You get to establish the culture of your organization. As a founder, good and bad, it's a reflection of your leadership. It's a reflection of your intent. And I think that's been a big important part of my journey. I know it's part of yours. You've shared as much. So how has that culture prepared the organization, or your take on that, or your feeling of leadership for what you see now looking out in the next 12 months as the biggest challenges that you need to hit, for you to experience the growth that you want with Med City?
Particularly in the last, I think scale, and the more you start, when you start a startup, it might be you or it might be two people, and there are all kinds of accommodations you make because it's just the two of you. And then the more you scale, the more you have to trust, the more you have to relinquish control, the more it's not about the core thing that I used to do, which was write articles, right? It's to lead a team, drive them on metrics, push them in different areas, right? I do more sales now than I do writing. And in this past year in particular, I think people is what matter most in a startup. And we added 2 leaders to what was at that point a 2-member management team, right? So we doubled
So
the
you doubled.
And I had major problems with that. I had problems with candor. I had problems with driving toward goals. I had problems with micromanagement. I had problems with letting people innovate within a box. I had all kinds of problems.
How did you realize you had those problems? Was that self-awareness, or did those new bodies come in and help you see that and hold up a mirror, so to speak?
Med City, I think one of Med City's strongest aspects is our board. And at the end of Med City has events. It's one of the ways we drive revenue. After an event, we had a retreat, and they asked to have the other 3 managers come in and make presentations to them. It was just some of the board who attended. And each of the 3 people made these presentations, and they left, and it was me alone with them. And they just destroyed me. They said,
Your board did.
yeah, because all of 3 essentially said the same thing. I need some specifics to drive to. And they said, and you could see also anxiety and now we were just beat from a big event, but you could see other things that these people were wearing. And the board said, you got to get your act together. I mean, you articulate things to us that are so clear that you should move forward, but where is that for these 3 people? How are you focusing these people? And they came at me. They saw the failings of somebody who was, spent, 20 years tramping around with a notepad trying to manage people. And to the credit of my board, and I hope a little bit to me, where I said, all right, let's hunker down. We spent 2 weeks of different kinds of sessions talking through things and setting up goals and reading the management books. It sounds cliche, but it's true. And that's how we reoriented. And it was still a bumpy ride, and there were still imperfections for the last 6 months. But that emphasis, my board's willingness to work with me, to be frank, to hold me accountable, that's one of the things that turned it for me. I wish I could take all the credit for it.
Well, I have to say, that does set you apart from many first-time entrepreneurs. I can't tell you how many of the hundreds I've coached over the years that we're often in that discussion point of you really need to get a board, and not for the sake of having one, but because of the counsel and the value they provide. So I have to tell you, if I think any objective listener hearing this interview wouldn't know that this was your first startup, could believe that this would be a second or a third, because your appreciation there shows a great deal. And speaking of appreciation, I want to thank you for sharing your story today. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I'm watching with great interest, as I have since your launch. I said, I think probably 3.5 years ago, that you're redefining journalism and what it means, and I stand by that prediction, and I hope to be proven very right in the not too distant future.
I hope so too.